So I've started on the next thing, and really this is finishing the fiberglass cabin top to the point where I can finally take it down, attach it permanently. In order to do that, I've got to do a couple of things. I've got to put the overhead console in. I also want to paint it on the inside, just like the doors. I'm going to paint it that lightish, greenish, bluish color. But in order to do that, there's a few things that I need to do first. So the first thing is, because I'm putting the overhead console in, you'll see the bracket here for the door strut needs to be cut out into that. So I need to do that. That's not a big deal, but I need to drill the holes before I do it, because once I put the cabin top on, I am not going to be able to get access to these holes anymore. At least not to drill them or match drill them. So what I need to do is match drill these. Once I get a match drilled from the other side, you'll see I can actually get in here and get access to the nut if I need to tighten it on. So once I get that done, not too worried about it. So that's the first thing. However, because of a couple of other mods that I'm making, so one is I'm looking at using the McMaster door seals, which are nothing more than the kind of seals that go on a car door. In order to do that, they're like a little bubble seal. So you got a little bulb on the outside. When the door pushes against it, it kind of crushes the bulb and seals it. In order to do that, I need to sand this lip down flat. And, there's a bunch of instructions for how to cut it. On the sides, I think we need about 1 inch. On the top, we need about 1.25 inches. And on the bottom, we need, I think, 1 inch, but I'm not sure yet. I haven't finalized that. So to get this to 1 inch, I could try and cut it with something, but I think I'm going to try and just sand it down flat. So basically sand it so that this lip is really just flat. It'll make it pretty narrow here, but then I can deal with that later by filling it in. So overall, not too difficult, but something I need to do. Don't need to do it to put that on. However, to put that on, like I said, I need to match drill this. Well, here's the catch with this one. The door seal needs to go on here, which I'll be able to do. You can cut out the notch here. That's not a big deal. This strut bracket. But if you think about it, on the inside of the door, as you can see here, there's this gap. Well, if the door seal is going across here, it's not going to have any surface to contact with, which means I need to fill these in. So if I fill these in, again, extra work, but not too difficult. I fill that in, and that's great. Except that once you fill that in, this bracket here now, because if you think about it, the door pocket right now is looking like that. I'm going to fill it in flush. And if I do that, it's going to push up on that bracket, or want to. So what I need to do is I need to put a spacer in here. I think I'm just going to do like a 1/16 inch spacer or something like that. Maybe just file this down a little bit. But you need to put enough of a spacer in here just so that when the door closes and you've got that filled in, it's not going to hit it. You could also get clever here and instead of filling it flat for the back ones, you could concave it. It's really, you've got to just decide what's the most feasible, easiest way for you to do it. For me, I'm probably not going to concave it because I think that will allow me to at least still be able to get in through the side or the back or the top here to be able to get at the nuts. If I needed to, or at least to tighten them and stuff. But that is something you need to think about. Also this, you need to make sure that doesn't hit with the bottom of the door. Again, not a big deal, but these are some things you need to think about. Anytime you're doing any of these mods, you're gonna have to think ahead, because if you just do it the way that Vance gets you to do it, you may end up doing something that's going to make it a lot harder. So for instance, if I had just epoxied this overhead console in, then I would have had to cut a chunk of it out, I guess, or I don't know, maybe there's some other ways. I haven't looked to figure it out, but you'd need to deal with it. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift that, put a couple of shims in here, just so that it's shimmed enough to give me a little bit of room. Because if you lift it up just like a 1/4 of an inch here, not even, you know, a 1/16 of an inch, just to lift it a little bit, you'll find it's pretty good, and you can test it out with the door. Once I get that match drilled, then I'm going to fiberglass this piece on, and I'm probably going to paint the inside, prime it and paint it. I may just finish sanding this down just to get the rough opening size, but I'm not too worried about that. And you know, you can't finalize the fit of the door until all of this is back on the plane, tightened down, and then once it's tightened down, I can snug it up. I'm also using this as an opportunity to, while I've got it off the plane, clean on the inside. I've got some access right now to be able to run anything I need to do, get the controls set up, and so on, but at least now I can get this, and this will be, you know, very much to complete the doors and the setup on the doors. The one thing also I'm gonna do here is, in my hanger, it gets damp, and you're not gonna be able to see it here, but what surprised me is how quickly these rust. I guess they're just metal iron. So what I'm gonna do is I'll clean them up, and I'm gonna put a metal primer and paint on top of it, just so they don't rust. Not that it'd be a big deal, it's just surface rust, but nevertheless, it just kind of looks pretty poor. So I'm not sure why they didn't make them out of something else, but yeah, that's it. And I don't know, maybe I don't think they're stainless or anything, but yeah. So that's some of the cleanup that needs to be done. And while this is going on, also, I'm in the process of making sure I get the elevator set up properly and put the fairings on the elevator. So I've got a couple of these things going on right now. But I figured I'd share this and share some of the things that you get to think ahead of. And I'm just gonna epoxy this down. So I'll mix up a mixture of epoxy and cotton flocks, smear it on here, epoxy it down. As you can see, I've already got, like from before, I've got the holes in here, Cleco it in place. I'll put some clamps on the sides so that it holds it nice and snug. And that should be good. And as I walk through this, what I'll also do is I'll also end up sanding this down with pretty fine sandpaper. Once I sand it down, it'll be nice. I'll polish it, and then I'll clear coat it so that it's nicely sealed and it'll retain that shiny look. And that's it for the moment, and I'll share more as I work my way through it. Continuing to work on getting this canopy top finished. On here you'll see I've got my one bracket in. I also have a shim underneath it, if you can see that there. That's 1/16, and I needed that just to lift it away from the door a little bit. So hopefully that'll work. I need to clean up the shim, and I'll sand it down and deburr it and all that good stuff and make it so it's pretty invisible, but that's what it's looking like. Now for me to drill these holes, I'm not sure what this material is, but it's pretty hard. So what I do is I do a number 30 to match drill the hole, which is what you see over here. Then I'll go to a number 20, then to a 15, and then I'll go to a 12. And that's how it works out. And then as I do it, I start putting the screws in here with the nuts on. And later you've got to go countersink the cabin top so that these are nice and flush. But that should work out pretty good. And that was just some aluminum I had lying around. So overall it worked. And now once I get these done, I can lay the center console in figure out where the marks need to be, cut it, and I should be good. And I should be able to reach this even with the center console in, so it shouldn't be a problem getting this nut on here once I close it up. There's the overhead console cut. So I notched it out here. It's raised a little bit here just because of the bracket, the spacer that I've got in here. I haven't cleaned it up yet, so I don't need to worry about that. But you know, it's there. And over here, there's a little bit of a gap here more than I needed, but on this side it's a little closer. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna have to fill it in with something anyway. So I'll do that. But now it's ready to be bonded in place. I'll take these brackets off. I'll clean them up like I said, but worry about that later. But I'll bond this in place, and now you can see I'll be able to get at the nuts here, no problem at all. And the one that's in here you'll be able to get to, so shouldn't be any issue. And this one's a little further in than that one, but yeah, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it makes any difference for this strut. If it does, we'll have to adjust the strut a little bit. But that's it. Next step, epoxy that thing in place. And that shouldn't be too hard. Basically, I'll just do up a mixture of the epoxy resin, some cotton flocks, smear it all over both pieces. I'll sand this down first, obviously. And then I'll just lay it in place. And along here, I wasn't able to drill any of the holes. So I'll have to use a number of these clamps. Just clamp it down pretty good. Back here is not bad because I've got lots of spots where I can put in the clamps, the clecos. Just got to remember to put something on the clecos so they don't get epoxied in as well. But there you have it. This is the overhead panel, and I epoxied it in. So basically epoxy resin and cotton flocks to give it some structural strength. On the back, obviously I had all the clecos with the stuff to make sure that it doesn't bond. All right, so we need that mold release gel on there, or paste. And then up here, I've got some clamps because I couldn't drill through and put clecos in here. And the same on the top. But that's it. We'll see how it goes. I put it on to the cabin top. I layered a goopy paste on the cabin top and then squished this down. I've already cleaned up some of the excess. There's going to be some that needs to be sanded off. But hopefully it'll be a good structural bond. The only area I'm concerned about at all is right here, because it really follows the contour of the cabin top. And I think I put enough in there, but we'll see. If not, it's pretty easy because I have the access panel here. I can always goop some on the inside. It's not a big deal. And the same up here, there's only a small lip. So I put it onto this piece to see if I can get adherence up here. And of course onto the overhead console as well. But that, I'm hoping, should do it. And you can see where the gap is for the piston brackets. And once this is set, I'll decide whether I'm going to go, and I may just put a layer of fiberglass down on this. I'm not sure yet. But if I do, it just means it'll be, you know, it'll hide that edge. It'll also make it a little more structural, but I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. But we'll see how that goes. And then obviously the next big thing is I'll do a rough sand of this. I'm not going to smooth it or anything else. I plan on putting a liner in here. And then I will paint it though. So that way, if the liner shows anywhere, what you'll see is a painted surface underneath it, not just kind of rough looking fiberglass. And it'll be the same color as the door over there. So it should all match. And then this section here, I did sand down a little more just to see if I can get a good bond here. That ridge is a little bit, you know, you've got to watch out for. But overall, this is pretty straightforward, nothing too exciting. I'd say the only thing you got to watch out for is the pot life of the fiberglass. You need to get it done before it starts to harden. And the trick here, at least from what I've learned, is the sooner you lay it out and get it out of the pot, the more time you'll have, because the amount of volume really matters on how quickly it sets. And if you've got it in the pot, obviously got a lot of volume, it's generating a lot of heat. You spread it out, it generates a lot less heat. And that's it for now. This is the result after it's been fiberglassed in. Well, actually epoxied in. And I've sanded it down. I've removed most of the tape spots. There's a few more little ones here I gotta clean up. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a mixture of epoxy and Cabosil and just do a little transition here just to, so I got it reasonably smooth. Again, I'm gonna put a liner in here. I'm not too worried about it. But with that Cabosil, it'll fill in any little gaps. Just make it cleaner. So that's the next thing. And so what I'll do is I'll mix that up and then I'll spread it out along here with a little spreader and see if I can get it as flat as I possibly can. Let that dry, then sand it down, see how that looks. And then from there, I'll probably do a coat of primer and paint. And of course, this thing still needs to be done. This is needs to be sanded. You can see here little defects, but once you sand it down with some pretty fine sandpaper, it'll get nice and shiny, clean it off, and then I'll clear coat it. Next step. On to the next stage. So I did actually do some additional glassing work. So I did glass it in again along the edges to smooth them out a little bit, the transition. I've actually decided I'm going to keep the edge carbon fiber. But did that, sanded it down, and then did a little bit of Bondo here just to fill in the gaps. We'll see how this turns out. One thing you need to be careful if you're going to use Bondo, you'll see back here it looks not too bad. Up here it's a little, up here you'll see it started to dry out. I think I put too much hardener in it. You really want to go easy with the hardener. But once that dries, I'll sand that down. You'll notice I didn't bond here on the sides. I don't really think there's a need. It's not, like I said, probably going to be covered. This is just kind of to make it look good regardless. I also did a little bit up here, but you gotta love the smell of Bondo. I don't know, something about it. And then what I'll do is also this piece, you'll see there's some spots here and up here and along here that I've kind of sanded down. I'll continue to sand that down a little more. And then I went and got, we'll see how this works out. But I got this stuff, which is 1K Clear Extreme Gloss Finish. So this is a clear coat. I'll polish this up a little bit. Well, actually, I'll finish sanding down all of this part. I'll then sand this, get it nice. I've got 400 grit paper to do that, maybe a little tiny bit of wet sanding there. Sand that down and put that clear coat on it, and hopefully that'll bring back the shine. It also protects it from UV and stuff like that. But that's where I'm at, and we'll see how well it goes. And the good news is, if you do run into a problem with the clear coat, you could always sand it off. And actually, here you see, that's what actually happened. As I was sanding, I sanded off the clear coat that comes on it. But it's pretty good. And what I like about the paint I'm using on the inside, which is the Stewart Systems water-based paint, it just, I don't know, it seems to look pretty good. You know, I'm not looking for perfection here, but even if you look at the door, and there's no clear coat or anything on this, a little dusty, but other than the color, because like I say, the color is not quite the blue that you see in this image, but it came out pretty good. And even with the surface not being perfect, it covers it up nicely. So that's the plan, and hopefully I'll get this done here pretty quickly. Initial sanding with 320 grit. Looks bad, so we'll see how it goes here. First coat. I can see some imperfections in it down here. You can see it where it's still kind of grayish. But that's the first coat, clear coat. And I've got a little piece in there. Okay, so fast forward in my pop-up paint booth in my garage. Also can be used as a sauna, I guess. Pretty warm, trying to cool it down. But as you can see, I did a quick primer job. I already had that obviously clear coated, taped that off. So I'm just gonna whip on a painting, a coat of the blue paint. Like I said, I'm not looking for perfection in here, and a lot of it around the doorway is gonna need to be cleaned up later once I get it on the plane and I get it all finished, because it's too thick as it is. But I just figured I'd spray it all down, at least to have a consistent color on the inside. But there it is, primed. Up next, the paint.